Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Leading things off, early voting is alive and well as we head into next month's Nebraska primary. Statewide, just over 49,000 early ballots have already been cast. Those numbers despite ongoing concerns from critics that early voting is a security risk. Joe Jordan has our report.
Getting your ballot, huh?
Yep.
You like voting early?
Yes, she does like voting early, and she's not alone.
50% of the people in Douglas County now vote by mail, and 50% vote at the polling place.
Early voting in Nebraska now starts 35 days before Election Day.
I feel I've learned a great deal the last 4 years.
State Senator Ben Hansen, a Republican, would cut that to 22 days, arguing it limits the amount of time for ballots to lay around. It wasn't that long ago that former President Donald Trump trashed early voting, on his Truth Social account noting, "You can never have fair and free elections with mail-in ballots. Never, never, never."
According to the conventional political wisdom, when it comes to early voting, it's Democrats who benefit the most, bringing those early ballots to the county drop boxes, while Republicans vote on Election Day. Now, however, according to recent numbers obtained exclusively by NCN, when it comes to early voting in Nebraska, it's advantage Republicans.
Look no further than 2 years ago. In the 2022 general election, 129,000 Republicans voted early, compared to nearly 98,000 early voting Democrats. During the 2022 primary, 101,000 Republicans voted early, compared to 61,000 Democrats. That's pushing a 2-to-1 GOP margin.
Thanks for helping them, guys.
Nebraska election officials see few, if any, security concerns.
How confident are you that mail-in balloting is not a problem?
Our mail-in ballots are secure, but we have to continually work to assure that that continues. It's a dynamic process. It's not a static process.
None of the early voting keeps you up at night?
I don't think so, no.
As for that bill shortening the early voting window, it's stalled in the legislature. In Omaha, Joe Jordan, News Channel, Nebraska.
Nursing home officials in Nebraska say a new federal mandate won't work here. That's the word of the Nebraska Healthcare Association after the White House announced a new rule mandating nursing homes have a registered nurse on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Speaking at the NHCA's annual conference in Kearney this week, nursing home officials say these new rules will impact rural areas the most, especially since the mandate does not appear to come with any additional money from the federal government.
I would say it is going to limit access to care. If this rule goes into place as it's projected to do, we do not have the RNs in the state to be able to even meet this need. So it's not something that's even rational to think that can happen.
Carpenter says she feels the new federal mandates are unobtainable. That assertion has been echoed by Nebraskans on Capitol Hill. U.S. Senator Deb Fischer has proposed provisions that would minimize the staffing rules, basing them instead on the needs of individual residents. Artificial intelligence might be the new cash cow of Silicon Valley. It's allowed Google's parent company to offer its first ever dividend payments. That's despite a new report that shows broader economic growth is becoming sluggish. Amy Kiley puts the latest tech windfalls into context.
It's another drop the mic quarter for tech.
Alphabet and Microsoft are providing a silver lining amid stormy news for the U.S. economy. Google's parent company is set to pay its first ever quarterly cash dividend. Investors will get 20 cents a share in June, plus a boost from stock buybacks. The company says last quarter's revenue was 15% higher than a year earlier. One reason?
This AI revolution's here.
Microsoft is part of that revolution too. It's posting a 17% revenue increase for the same period.
They're generating, along with big tech, more cash than some countries.
That news follows a gloomy GDP report out yesterday. It shows 1.6% growth in the first quarter of this year. That's the slowest since the economy contracted in 2022. What makes it worse is rising inflation. The GDP report contains signs of that. Today, the Federal Reserve's go-to inflation gauge is out. It's called the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index.
The last thing the Federal Reserve wants to see is long period of stagflation, which is inflation significantly outpacing these economic growth rates.
One unrevised GDP report doesn't prove stagflation, but it worries some investors. Stagflation could make it hard for the Fed to ease inflation without increasing the chance of a recession. I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Across the nation, cities of all sizes are reinvesting in their downtowns. In the 60s and 70s, it seemed to be the opposite. People were heading to the suburbs and businesses relocated. But now there's a push to revitalize the heart of towns. Casey Wannenberg takes us to Valentine, where they recently finished a multi-million-dollar project.
This one we call the Taylor Swift dress because this is what she wore for one of her Grammys.
From Taylor Swift-inspired clothes to a little country flair.
Because we're here in the Heart City in Cowboy Land.
Whitney Mayhew tries to offer a little bit of everything at Broken Spoke Boutique in downtown Valentine.
You're always trying to look for what is the next thing that you can continue to do to help your business grow.
In today's digital age, that involves creating an experience that will get people off their phones and into the store. Mayhew considers everything from the music to the smell and the decor.
So when you come into Broken Spoke, I want you to get a feel of who I am as a person. I want you to feel welcomed. I want you to feel comfortable. And that's kind of how we have things reflected with our decor, with our style in here.
That atmosphere is also what city leaders have been working on outside.
We made the bike racks heart-shaped.
Valentine recently finished a multi-million-dollar downtown renovation project.
This was the single largest infrastructure investment in the history of Valentine,
which includes new landscaping, art, and a brand new Main Street.
This was the second oldest concrete in the state highway system, so we knew that it needed done, but underneath that concrete was a lot of infrastructure that we needed to replace at the same time. And then we took the opportunity to really enhance Main Street through some streetscape investments.
In addition to street improvements and new landscaping, the city also has a new light system that includes safety features.
A Main Street has to be safe first and foremost. The state wanted to make sure there were bump outs there to make it easier to cross the street, and we looked at every other safety enhancement we could.
Mayor Kyle Argenbright says the project is already starting to pay off.
We've seen a huge influx of investment, and there's even more planned.
He's seeing more interest now in revitalizing downtown than he has over the past decade.
So I view our city's job as creating a place that people want to be and a place that people want to invest. And so these types of investments are critical for that purpose.
The fun trucker hats that are one of a kind. And that's
new projects that Mayhew hopes
like it
will bring new customers into her store.
New opportunities that are coming up. It's going to allow more people to continue to shop on Main Street, which is what we want.
In Valentine, Casey Wannenberg, News Channel, Nebraska.
For anyone of all.
School districts are dealing with distraction from cell phones and other electronic devices in the classroom. Beatrice is no different. High school principal Jason Suter says an updated policy would prohibit personal electronic devices during classes. Those students would be able to have them during transition time between classes and during lunch.
We started looking at this, folks. It's not just cell phones that are a distraction in class. It's smartwatches that kids can actually text and receive texts and talk into and look up things on the internet on. It's earbuds that sometimes our kids listen to that are distracting. They're listening to music or whatever else it might be, or what they've actually, we had a teacher find that a student had made themselves notes on a quiz that they were taking the night before and was listening to that while they were taking the quiz. So it's not just cell phones, it's going to be personal electronic devices. Those include phones, smartwatches, iPods, headphones.
Suter says he worked with a committee made up of staff members and student representatives on the revised plan. Some exceptions could be made when cell phones or electronic devices are needed for instruction or for special medical needs. Some schools have purchased specialized bags that students place devices in, but the expense there is high. Suter said instead a less expensive bag or box would be used by instructors to keep devices in until class is over. Grand Island Crime Stoppers have raised thousands for an officer's memorial trip to Washington, D.C. Ana Ruth Lugo Mejia has the details.
A community in central Nebraska has come together and helped finance a trip to the U.S. Capitol to commemorate